Yes, sir. Now I can hear also and see also. Yeah.
Okay, fine, right. Okay, so Ronak, so give us a minute, right? We'll start in a bit, right?
Okay, sir.
Okay, so Ronak, can we start?
Yes, sir.
Okay, right. So Ronak, introduce yourself.
So I'm Ronak Agarwal, and I have been born and brought up in Calcutta. My father is a businessman, and my mother is a homemaker. And I have done my graduation in BCom from St. Xavier's College, and then I completed my chartered accountancy, and then I started preparing for the UPSC. Along with that, I am teaching economics for the CA Chartered Accountants inter students, and my hobby is writing poetry and teaching as well.
Okay, so Ronak, considering what inspired you to write this exam, you were a topper in CA. Why don't you just practice? You're so good at it.
So actually, right from class 12, my grandfather had told me about this UPSC, and then I inquired about this. So I had my mind made up that I'll be going for UPSC, but I did my CA to keep it as a fallback provision because as difficult and as elite the service is, so I wanted something to have another course as a fallback provision. And moreover, to answer your second question, that why not CA and why to go for UPSC. So, being a chartered accountant, I would be dealing with the balance sheets and the suspense accounts of some particular corporate. But after becoming an IAS or any other civil servant, I'll be able to do the job on the ground and be able to cover the deficits of a larger number of people. So, I wanted to make my minor contribution at a macro level. So, I
Okay,
wanted to,
so
go
considering,
for
let's
this.
assume that you become an IS and you are made the DC of Calcutta, right? So, what steps would you take, and what do you think are the problems, and how would you solve them?
So actually, the voice got cracked. The
Okay.
question is that if I become the DC, yeah.
Calcutta. Of your
So what
hometown.
steps will I take to?
What are the problems you see, and what steps would you take to solve them?
So speaking of Calcutta, we all know that Calcutta of the past, that is pre-independence, is not something which is right now. Rajiv Gandhi had also told in 1985 that Kolkata is a dying city, and we all know that given the current scenario, West Bengal as a whole and Kolkata in specific is not that elite anymore. So first of all, I would like to reinstate that eliteness in Calcutta again. To start with, I'll go for the economic development. As we know that because of the long rule of the left front government and then some of the tyrannical measures by the present government against the capitalists, I would like to reinstate the trust in the capitalists so as to uh, create that invisible hand and trust mechanism between the corporates and the people at large. So my first step would be reinstating industries. Second is that Kolkata still remains to be the cultural capital of India. Therefore, we need to make it at a larger level and use it for tourism purpose. So, according to me, I'll take the two broadest steps will be socio-economic development and tourism so as to reinstate the culture in India.
Okay, right. What are social evils you see in Calcutta?
So in Calcutta, the social evils begin with beggary. This is something which is rampant in all the streets, in each and every street of Calcutta. Second of all, the way we treat the transgenders also because on the major Park Street and Alipur Road, we have transgenders who are forced to beg. That is something which I need to put a stop to. Then again, sir, since it is an urban city, the rural evils are not that vibrant or they are not quite visible. But because of the semi-urban culture, there are still the evils of rural areas which are present in the outskirts. So the untouchability, poverty, these are something which is lacking. Again, because of the urban migration, many people who have been from Bihar, UP, or Odisha who have been forced to migrate to Calcutta, they are not able to live up to the standards which they aspired for. They do not have the access to education, to health. So these are some things which are culminating in to the larger evil. evil of not being able to achieve their aspiration.
Okay. It says you achieved a regional rank 3 in essay writing by UNIC. What was this essay?
Sir, this essay I wrote about was in that Safalta Dwara Vinamrata Ani Chahiye. It means that with more success, you should attain humility and be more humble.
Okay. So give me an example. What did you write in this?
Sir, if I can just quote something, there is a saying that Adgal Gagri Chalkar Jaye Bhari Gagariya Ki Jaye. It means that a pot which is filled with water, it always goes calm and without dropping a drop of water. But if it is half filled, it will always aspire to come to the top and then drop outside the pot. So it means that a person who is filled with knowledge and who has attained success according to what he or she could, in that case, he should be more humble. For example, a tree which is covered with fruits, is always bent, and therefore it can sustain the winds and the dark times. But a fruitless tree is always standing straight, and ultimately, if in disaster, it is the first to get uprooted. So that is the entire context.
Okay, right. It says you teach high school students?
So high school, sir, professionally I'm teaching CA Inter, but as a hobby I teach high school and other professional courses as well.
Okay, so how would you compare, what is the difference in style of teaching while you're teaching for CA Inter and vis-a-vis teaching somebody who's younger?
So first of all, I feel that hobby is something which I'm doing of my own volition without expecting anything in return. So when I'm teaching as a professional to the CA Inter students, I have to have a proper schedule. I have to complete the syllabus within a particular time limit. And there is an accountability and responsibility on both my side and my students. But sir, when I'm teaching as a hobby, I'm teaching at various NGOs. There is an NGO called Vidyapati Smarak Manch. They conduct some sessions according to my availability. So it's not that I have to be available at a particular time on each and every day so as to complete the syllabus. So it's more of a help to them also and to my recreational abilities as well.
Okay, sure. So, hi Ronak, can you hear me?
Hello, sir.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
You're like pretty fond of writing poems and you recite them as well, no?
So I couldn't hear. Can you please repeat?
You love reciting poems?
So I love writing poems, but yeah, I can recite poems as well.
So as it happens, like who's your favorite poet in Hindi?
So my favorite poet is Suryakant Tripathi Nirala.
Okay, so recently again, like there were a lot of poems going around in a lot of campuses. So can you tell me like the role of poem in bringing out about, let's say, any kind of political change in the society?
So I'll start with the life of Nirala first of all to explain the context.
Okay.
So Nirala and Shankar Prasad and all the contemporaries, they are called as Chayavad poets. That means that they represent what is going on in the society in their poems, along with a tinge of sarcasm. So I suppose that with the ability to express oneself through poetry, it is something wherein I am encompassing empathy for the person who is feeling the pain or my own pain, and be able to explain and communicate myself in clear terms in a very subtle manner. So according to me, poetry is something which you can express your views with great sarcasm, tinting at the exact point, but without being seditious as well.
Okay. So how would you relate with Ahmed Faiz poetry? Like, do you happen to connect with it, or do you find it absolutely alien?
So I haven't heard or read about the poetry which you are referring to, so I do not really know what it
Ahmed
is.
Faiz, like recently it was being recited in a lot of colleges across the India. हम देखेंगे. So have you heard about it?
Now that you tell me about Faiz Ahmed Faiz, I had read it in the newspaper day before or yesterday, but I do not know what exactly was in the poem. So sorry, I won't be able to comment on that.
Okay, and so you do read about English poetry as well, no?
What's that?
English.
So I couldn't hear again.
English poetry.
No, sir, I haven't read about English poetry. I write, but English, because my background was in West Bengal board. So, sir, my Hindi poetry knowledge is great, but I write poems in English, but I haven't read much in English poetry. I do not, I won't be able to recall or comment on that.
All right. So, they also like recently I was watching it on TV that recently a famous celebrity has been appointed as the brand ambassador of West Bengal tourism. Who is it?
So, Shah Rukh Khan was the brand
Yes,
ambassador of
that's
West Bengal
right.
tourism. Yes.
So there are a couple of places which have UNESCO World Heritage title in West Bengal. Can you maybe recall what are those places?
So one is the Victoria Memorial. Then we have the Botanical Gardens. Then we have I'm sorry, sir. Actually, there are two UNESCO World Heritage sites. One is the High Mountain Railways, and the other is the Sundarbans. I'm sorry, I was confusing it with something else.
Okay, correct. So one more thing. Like, you've said that you've been the head of Fin Control. What is Fin Control?
So, fin control is actually a wing which is used colloquially in the colleges and high schools. It means finance control. So, it's basically the treasury department, which is, given a fancy name called fin control. It basically decides the budget. It does the financial management. It decides from where to get the funding and how to invest and where all to invest and what to keep the entry fee so as to keep it the cost benefit analysis. That is the entire purpose of fin control.
One last question from my side would be recently there's a lot of debate about moving towards capitalism. Like even you started off with that kind of a similar stuff. So even the present economic survey also maybe it's putting forward a case where they want to move towards hardcore capitalism. So you think only capitalism, like with its core principles, can be a good idea for a society like India, which is diverse and I would say poor, monetarily.
So actually,
Yeah. So,
so
you
first
think
of all,
hardcore capitalism would be a good idea for India?
So first of all, what I was referring to was not hardcore capitalism. I was referring to the invisible hand mechanism which was spoken in the budget, in the economic survey itself. It spoke about the trust and the market. So hardcore capitalism cannot be confused with crony capitalism and something of the Western side, which is totally oblivious of the societal evils which is present in the Indian society right now. So as you spoke that Indian society is diverse and poor, so capitalism has to be clubbed with this, with the socialistic values, so as to lead to the trickle-down effect. So basically, what the economic survey was speaking about was wealth creation, wherein we need to create that trust both in the minds of the capitalist class and in the mind of the common public, so as there is a two-way exchange between the two. There should not be any gap, so that because without wealth creation, there cannot be wealth distribution. Because as Mr. Modi also said in his speech that those who create the wealth are actually gems of wealth. But that to distribute the wealth in the socialistic pattern, there needs to be creation of wealth. And that is why while speaking about the capital wealth creation in the economic survey, we focus on the small firms. So basically, it's not about that one particular monopoly or oligopoly dominating the entire market. It's about reaching each and every strand of society, wherein what is needed is created, and ultimately the consumer should be the sovereign.
Right. Okay. Over to you, ma'am.
Hi, Ronak.
Hello, ma'am.
So I believe you've got a very great inclination towards Hindi literature and English literature, and I believe coming from Bengal, it's one of the necessary requirements for being connotated as a Bengali, right? Now, considering the city of Kolkata that you've grown up in, that you've been associated with, there's this novel written by the name of City of Joy. Have you heard of it?
Ma'am, kindly repeat.
There's this novel called The City of Joy, which is supposed to be one of the greatest odes to a city that can ever be, right? Do
Yes,
you
ma'am.
recall that novel? What was it based on?
Ma'am, Calcutta or Kolkata is called the City of Joy because first of all, there is the cultural capital of India, which I told before. Second, because of the colonial legacy which we enjoyed, wherein we were the capital of the British India then. So the entire economic development of then British India was focused and surrounded up around Calcutta.
Right.
Thirdly,
Let me
in the
just
present-
pause you there, Ronak. The novel actually concentrated on the underbelly of the city, right? The twin cities of Kolkata and Howrah, right? So, how
Yes,
do you
ma'am.
analyze the problems that the novel had pointed out, considering Howrah as a place which is inhabited by the poor, the deprived, right? The people who obviously at that time suffered from leprosy, right, in huge numbers, and the kind of urbanization problems that Kolkata is witnessing today. Do you see any parallels?
Ma'am, to the first question, wherein where you mentioned that Howrah is the place where the poor are residing, ma'am, that is something which is a view. Ma'am, can you hear me? Because I
Yes,
think the
yes,
video
yes.
has stopped. Okay, sorry. But ma'am, this view is something which is being a prisoner of the past, because today it is nothing that the people who are poor are residing in Howrah. That has developed by leaps and bounds in present terms. And ma'am, around the amount of the scale of industries, the scale of development, all the big shopping malls, all the big food chains, these have developed vehemently in the Howrah region. But definitely it's true that, because ma'am, this is true for each and any other city. For example, we are speaking about Navi Mumbai, or we are speaking about Gurgaon, or we are speaking about any other city which is actually a sister city to a main city. This is something which develops as being poor, but then because its job is to complement the main city in the question. So when we're speaking about Calcutta and Howrah, Howrah is now reaching that level wherein it can and be able to complement the Calcutta as a city in all its economic and social development parameters.
Right. So talking about industrialization and talking about the disadvantages, well, the problems that come hand in hand with industrialization is also with regard to this Ramsar site that you have in the region.
Ma'am, which fight?
Ramsar?
Ramsar. Okay, yes, ma'am.
Yes, which is?
Ramsar. RAMSR.
Yes, and which is that site?
Ma'am, are we talking about the Ramsar Convention of
Yes,
1971,
yes, we
or are
The Ramsar Convention.
okay? I got it. Actually, I was confusing with industrialization.
Yes.
The Sundarbans have been a lot given the Ramsar status.
Or is it the East Kolkata wetlands?
Ma'am, so East Kolkata Westlands was already there, but Sundarbans has also been included in the Ramsar site just
Right.
recently in 2019.
Right. So with regard to the East Kolkata wetlands and this huge controversy regarding illegal fillings in the East Kolkata wetlands, how do you imagine the significance of maintaining these wetlands considering climate change and the kind of problems that Kolkata as a city can witness?
Ma'am, talking about wetlands, because of the rampant urbanization and because of the hunger for more and more land, we are actually going for filling of the salt pans and the wetlands. And this is something which is common everywhere in India. This is something which is bad. Therefore, more so for a wetland which has been in the Ramsar list, for example, the East Kolkata wetland which you talked about, and the Sundarbans, ma'am, according to me, if in any case there is something which is leading to degradation, widespread degradation, it can be put to the Montreux record, so that we are actually taking steps so that it does not degrade it to a level which can.
Why are the East Kolkata wetlands important for the city? What is their significance?
Ma'am, first of all, because of the inherent vegetation of the wetlands, they are important because they are the ones who are recharging the entire water levels of the city. Second of all, due to the unique vegetation and flora and fauna, they are giving an aesthetic spirit to our city and the entire state as a whole. And then again, the aesthetic beauty and the other climate benefits, this is something which is common to each and every wetland. Therefore, be it East Kolkata wetland or any other wetland, we have to be able to secure it from the industrialization, so that climate change is something which should be of the past.
Right. Ronak, I see that you come from St. Xavier's, Kolkata,
Yes, ma'am.
right? And who is St. Xavier's, the college named after?
Ma'am, it is named after Saint Xavier's. He was a Jesuit priest who was the disciple of Saint Thomas. So, like Saint Thomas came to India to spread Jesuit the ideals of Christianity, and as his disciple, Saint Xavier's was the one who emerged as the leading one. So, Saint Xavier's College is being named after him.
Okay. Also, you've been involved in teaching, whether it is as someone who's teaching professional students or just taking up tuitions or teaching students of higher education. Did you get a chance to look at the ASAR report 2019, which was recently released?
Yes, ma'am.
And are there any insights that you have with regard to learning issues that students in India continue to face?
Yes, ma'am, definitely. The ASER report of 2019 or 18, these are again painting the same grim figure, wherein the key problem is about the quality of teaching and learning. Therefore, like as we know, ma'am, just a personal example. Yesterday, the daughter of my maidservant had come to my house, and we were just discussing that what I was learning in. So she was reading in class 8, and I talked about what are subjects which are being taught. She told that we are being taught geography, history, and various other things. So I just asked that, and she was being taught in Hindi medium. I just asked that how many planets are there in the solar system. She wasn't being able to answer that. So and moreover, okay, if she's reading in Hindi medium, she might not be so fluent in English. I just gave her a Hindi newspaper to read. And ma'am, it's very pathetic and very disheartening to see that being in class 8, she wasn't even able to read that entire one line in one go. So we can talk about the quality and how it has reached the levels from this single incident.
The report also talked about the importance of cognitive learning instead of the focus on subjective learning, which it says has been the main point of concentration as far as Indian education system is concerned. How do you differentiate the two?
Ma'am, the entire education system of India has been actually due to being based on the colonial regime. So the foundation stone of education is so as to get a job. Therefore, even speaking of me, ma'am, when I was reading in class 9 or 10, my main aim was to get good marks, frankly, and it is something which is of each and every student, because the teacher, he or she is not able to inculcate that spirit. If we are teaching history, we should not be just teaching the events. We need to explain the importance of the events and the role which that event played at the larger picture, so that the student actually knows about it and remembers it when he or she is of 21 years of age.
What are certain concrete suggestions in terms of policies or schemes or any other measures that the government of India can incorporate, considering a new draft national education policy has been in the making? A lot of reforms are being envisaged, even in the higher education sector, right? What are some of these measures that you would be really looking forward to being incorporated, and analyzing certain amendments, certain changes that the government is envisaging? Your comment on those as well?
Ma'am, I was actually going to point about the draft national education plan. Ma'am, that is something which should be implemented in each and verbatim, because it speaks about, first of all, the ECC, which is the early childhood care and education. This actually takes care of the cognitive and the foundational learning which we were speaking about earlier. Second, the most important issue is right now is the quality of teaching. This is the reason behind the poor quality is twofold. First of all, the teachers are not that qualified, or rather they are not interested in teaching because of the sad state of affairs in these government-funded schools. Second, even the parents, for example, my maid servant, she herself is not educated. She does not understand that what is the importance of teaching. My grandmother told her that your daughter should not be the one who is cleaning other people's house when she turns old. So, ma'am, first of all, we need to bring that mindset change in the people, that education, because we are actually at the peak phase of demographic dividend. Education is something which needs to.
Could I just have really pointed remarks, just certain measures that you would like to see forth, right? Certain things that can be put in as a policy mandate.
Right.
Right.
Ma'am, first of all, we need to bring that mindset change in the people, that education, because we are actually at the peak phase of demographic dividend. Education is something which needs to.
Just certain measures that you would like to see forth, right? Certain things that can be put in as a policy mandate.
Ma'am, first of all, I would like for a proper teacher training schools and teacher quality education criteria, which gives the certificate that he or she is fit to teach. Second of all, the midday meal schemes need to be vehemently followed as verbatim as it is mentioned in the law. Third, as per the Right to Education Act, it mentions that there has to be a panel of student, teachers, and the parents so as to maintain the long-term requirements of the student. This needs to be followed. And fourth of all, the early childhood care and education, which I talked about, needs to be implemented. And most important, again, for the higher education, we need to focus on research. And as there are 3 tiers mentioned in the draft National Education Policy, we need to focus on that.
Thank you, Ronak.
Okay. One thing like I want to have your views on. Recently, this Nirbhaya rape case is again in news.
Yes, sir.
So what do you think? Like, how do we end up creating deviance of this sort? So can we do anything about it, or only punishment, or you believe punishment is the only option we have? Can we do anything to stop these kind of crimes to happen again?
So first of all, the criminal justice which we are talking about, so the main aim of that criminal justice should be to retribute or rehabilitate, so as to bring a deterrent in society. So capital punishment as a whole is something which will not be doing any effective measure in deterrence, to create deterrence in society. So according to me, first of all, the mindset of the parents needs to be changed, as there was an ad when it says that we need to teach to the sons that how they need to behave. Second of all, sexual education in the schools needs to be implemented and continue to a larger level. The third, about the pornographic measures, the pornography which is so rampant and child pornography, we need to make a stop so that we cannot put a stop to porn as a whole, but through proper sexual education and through proper tweaking of the site, I think we can create some mindset change. And so punishment is a sort of deterrence, but capital punishment will not do anything at large. We need to have some type guidelines, the Shaka guidelines, and we need to have it in the workplace as well. So these are the broad measures.
Okay.
Right. Ronak, now I see you come from an extremely enterprising community as far as Bengal is concerned, right? It's been a community that has seen a lot of thriving business and continues to provide thriving businesses as far as Bengali community is concerned. Now, considering the present decline in unemployment, how crucial do you think self-employment and entrepreneurship is? Right, not just keeping in mind the kind of push that it can give to the economic growth, but given the employment statistics in the country, right, and certain concrete measures that can be employed to promote the same as well.
Ma'am, speaking of self-employment, although we are focusing much on Startup India, but according to me, job employment and self-employment should go hand in hand, because each and every person cannot become an entrepreneur. And ma'am, as I spoke about, already people are lacking education, and because of the lack of that, we cannot expect that people are actually coming out as entrepreneurs and giving jobs to others. So according to me, the small firms as the startups and the larger firms need to flourish hand in hand, so that on one hand, the larger firms are becoming larger, and on the other hand, the small aspirations of entrepreneurs are actually getting air about it. Yeah. And ma'am, according to the measures which you asked about, ma'am, first of all, the ease of doing business, we are still lagging behind it. In the economic survey, it was mentioned that we still take 18 days to start a business, and it's half a day in New Zealand. That is something we need to work upon. And ma'am, second of all, although I might sound very antithetical to what is normally the belief, but these measures and these indices actually do not capture the entire scenario on the ground of the entire India. So even if we are improving 77 month notice in ease of doing business, but on the ground, I do not think much change has been done. So this is the large, and also the tax fronts and how we are actually treating the startups, the angel investors, and we need to have a clear policy about it. There cannot be policy uncertainty at large.
Right. You heard about the social mobility index that was taken out by the WEF, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Right. And what were some of the concrete results that it had as far as India was concerned?
Ma'am, social mobility. Ma'am, actually, I am not being able to recall what were the parameters. But if I would if I were to take a fluke, I
Right, so
guess that
India ranked
social
extremely poorly as far as social mobility in India was concerned. And one of the chief concerns of the index was the fact that you have to move away from the idea of wealth inequality to social inequality. Now, considering someone
yeah.
who has had a lot of training and education in the sphere of finance, in the sphere of economics, so on and so forth, what is your take on these two concepts, right? And how do you think one is more important than the other if you believe that to be the case?
Ma'am, like we are talking about inequality and both in economic and social parameters, right?
Yes.
Just to clarify. Okay, so ma'am, first of all, not only the social mobility index, also on the other inclusive development index or the Gini coefficients, we are lagging behind the other Nordic countries, and around 70% of wealth is still in the hands of 1% of wealthy people. So inclusive development is something which has to be the goal of immediate term and the long term. And not only economic but also social development. Socially, ma'am, there was a study which said that because of the new era of liberalization and urbanization, the poor are not spending on food, but they are spending on non-food essential items. So ultimately, we are actually, because of these factors, we are ranking low even in the HDI. We lag behind in food, we lag behind in education, we lag behind in health, we lag behind in nourishment. So according to me, these both factors need to be focused upon. And the trickle-down effect, which we were speaking of, this should be reversed and talked about from the bottom-up approach, wherein the development should come from the bottom, as we spoke about the small firms and how we need to create more jobs with education and health.
Right. Thank you, Ronak.
Ronak, have you attended any coaching classes?
Have I attended? No, no, sir. I didn't take any coaching class.
So you're preparing absolutely on your own.
Absolutely on my own. But sir, I do definitely have referred to some of the notes, because in Delhi, quite many books are available, so I refer to them, but I didn't take any coaching classes.
Okay.
Right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Right.
Thank you.
Let's move to your feedback.